How much do you earn weekly?
This is the World Inequality Report from 2022. It states that the global average income is $23,000, and if you earn an income of $122,000 or above, you're in the top 10% of global earners. There is so much more to this topic than the average I just gave to you. So today I want to challenge the way many of us think about work, highlight the huge gap between the top and the bottom, and hopefully show you that when we look at the human population globally, this planet of ours isn't very big at all.
The place is fucking massive.
Billions of people doing trillions of things. So I guess the obvious place to start is then, how many people are even working? This is a paper from the International Labour Organization, and on page 36 they look at the global workforce. They estimate that around 1.74 billion people are employed on this planet. The most common job is a retail assistant, closely followed by food preparation. So the 1.74 billion employed people make up around 53% of the global workforce. I was surprised by that number, to be honest. Only about half of the workforce on the planet are actually employed. I mean, what the hell are the rest of you doing? The rest are employers themselves, independent workers, or family workers who operate in what's called an informal economy. I found this interesting because there's this narrative in the Western world, and it goes a little something like this.
Being your own boss gives you the ability to have complete autonomy of your choices, an opportunity to pursue your dreams on your terms.
Well, what colour's your brigade?
That's Thor, who I'm pretty sure is employed by Disney, telling us to be our own boss, so we can pursue our dream on our own terms. Clearly his dream was to ingest tons of growth hormones and prance around in a red cape all day. I mean, all power to him. But I do have an issue with this be your own boss, it's all about choice and autonomy crap. The home of entrepreneurship is arguably America, where the founding fathers paved the way for founder culture, where anyone from anywhere can pursue
that great American dream.
But would you be surprised if I told you that they have one of the lowest rates of self-employment globally? Around 10% according to the OECD. As someone who grew up in the UK, I mean, your experience might be different to mine, but it never felt like entrepreneurship was something that was encouraged. But the self-employment rate in the UK is actually higher than that of America. It's about 13% here. That didn't make sense to me until I realised one simple truth. Entrepreneurship is associated with being poor. In fact, the poorer the country, the more self-employed people there are. Chile, 24%, Colombia, 53%. In Niger, 95% of the population are self-employed. The countries with the strongest job markets and highest median incomes have the lowest rates of self-employment because being self-employed is hard. And the better and more established the job market is, the less incentive there is to take a risk on being self-employed. Given the choice, I wonder what percentage of the population of Niger would swap autonomy and freedom for the security and predictability of a steady paycheck. I'm not saying being self-employed is awful, I mean, I'm self-employed myself, but I do think we need to be skeptical of the narratives forced upon us by shady characters who are looking to sell crap courses, or by major corporations using PED popping performers with the goal of peddling perfume. Be your own boss is as much a corporate slogan as anything nowadays. So let's say you just do it and become your own boss. Would you be loving it? In 2019, the Trade Union Congress conducted an analysis of pay of self-employed people in the UK. They found almost half of self-employed adults over the age of 25 were earning less than minimum wage. Not exactly what it says on the tin, is it? Next time someone makes you feel like a wage slave brokey who somehow tapped out on life because you're not doing your own thing and you probably smell bad, remember that you have more flexibility and choice over your life. You work less hours than most self-employed people do. You get paid holiday, sick pay, all manner of statutory benefits, pension benefits, all these things. And you statistically are probably earning more than most self-employed people as well. If you want to become self-employed, you know what, go for it. I'm all for it. But it's not an easy path. The privilege of the West really is the fact that you can choose to be self-employed while knowing there is a stable job market as well that you can re-enter at any time. The vast majority of the world are forced into self-employment through a lack of options. Sorry, slight tangent there, but I stumbled across that while researching it, found it interesting and thought, you know, I paid 10 quid for that song, I'm going to get my money's worth. Anyway, speaking of getting our money's worth, let's now look at the highest and lowest paid countries on the planet.
Making a living is a process of getting and spending money.
So it turns out managing average incomes or earnings on a global scale is pretty hard for a number of reasons.
Massive.
I mean, yes, there's that. But also, as I've shown, most of the global workforce don't collect a salary. So by measuring salaries, what we're actually doing then is missing out the majority of earners. So okay, what income should we measure? Should that include income from investments, property, stocks and shares? Even if we just looked at salaries, should that include pension contributions, car allowance, stock options, right to work schemes? Where do we stand on cash in hand? I told you this was a little bit more complicated than just the average, didn't I? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a couple of data sets to you so we can get a better picture of the overall outlook. The numbers are going to be very different between the two data sets, and I'll explain why when we go through them, but I think both provide interesting insight. Let's start here with a table presented by world.info that looks at data compiled by the OECD and is accurate to 2022. The number in this table are high because they measure gross national income, which is the total income earned by a country's people and businesses no matter where it is earned. This then encompasses all incomes and means we get a real view of earnings, even if the definition of earnings here is quite broad. Then that data is divided by the number of people or residents of that country to give us their average income per resident. At the top of the list, we have tax havens like Monaco, whose average income means the average person in Monaco is in the top 10% of people in the world. Bermuda is another tax haven. Luxembourg would claim it's not a tax haven, but was recently awarded the 6th spot of the worst tax haven on the Corporate Tax Haven Index. Some of you may be surprised to see Ireland so high up the list, a full 16 places above the UK, but Ireland is a corporate tax haven itself, and when we look at the median figures in a second, this number will make more sense. The UK is listed here as having an average income of $49,000, and right at the bottom of this list is Afghanistan on $390. I found examples of countries that sit even lower than this. Burundi has a national average income of about $231 a year per person. That's 100 times less than the global average. That's why we started with this GNI measure from the OECD. Not because it tells us accurately what normal people earn, but because it speaks to disparity, from the top to the bottom to the middle, and even the disparity that exists domestically. Let's just go back to America again and I'll show you what I mean. Here, the OECD reports that the average American income is a very respectable $76,370. But 28% of households in America make less than $28,000 a year. That's whole families living off less than $28K a year in a country where the supposed income is 3 times that. When you realise that 30% of the world's billionaires live in America, you see why disparity here is so vast. The top 3 richest people in America have more than the bottom 50%. We see a similar situation in Ireland, which is why their average income is so high on the original list. Oxfam reported that the 2 richest people in Ireland have more wealth than the bottom 50%. On screen is a map that gives a representation of something called the Gini coefficient, which uses GNI data that we looked at a minute ago to calculate relative disparity in a country. The darker the colour, the worse the inequality income-wise. Notice how South Africa has the highest levels of income inequality, as in the biggest gap between the haves and the have-nots. Europe has one of the lowest rates globally, and America, even though it's considered a developed, well-off economy, has high levels of inequality. A country can be poor or rich and still have high levels of inequality. And in the same breath, a country can be seen as wealthy and have high incomes, and a large percentage of the population can be considered impoverished. I'm reading a really good book at the minute called Follow the Money by Paul Johnson. I'll link it below for you. There's a section at the start of chapter 3 which kind of highlights this point in the UK where I live. 1/5 of people in the UK live in poverty at the moment, and the majority of these people are either working themselves or live with someone that works. This is a relatively new feature of the UK economy. 20 years ago, most people who were poor were out of work. Now having a job, both part-time or full-time, is no guarantee of not being poor. These averages do a really bad job of showing us the reality of what normal people's earnings look like, but do a great job of highlighting the disparity that exists everywhere at all ends of the scale. Statistica produced something they called the wealth pyramid, based on a report by Credit Suisse. 47.8% of the global household wealth is in the hands of just 1.2% of the world's population. So if you have more than $1 million in wealth, you are in this bracket here of the 62.5 million people that control 50% of absolutely everything. The next one down, 627 million people have between 100k and 1 million, but the bottom 53% of the global population share between them 1% of global wealth. This isn't some tax the rich video, that's not the point, but when we're looking at global earnings, we have to consider these points to get a better understanding of what's going on. So now, let's look at a measure that's a little bit more accurate in terms of a reflection of what normal people earn using median income figures. This is where we take a population and look at the middle earner. 10 quid for the song. I actually found it hard to find median data that was kind of up to date. But we'll look at the raw data collected here by World in Data. They have this map that you can press play and see how median daily incomes have changed over time. This is a CSV that they used to compile that. I've then filtered out all of the past years and included the most recent year's data that we have for each country. The year is listed here. This is daily data listed in dollars after tax and benefits. You could divide your net salary a month by the 21 average working days in a month to get an idea of where you rank on this if you wish. from a daily earnings perspective, that is. But I think it's pretty clear to see that the median figures here are significantly lower than the other data that we looked at, again highlighting that disparity point and showing the influence that the wealthy have on the data set. But please bear in mind as well that people who work part-time hours are also going to influence this median figure, because they'll kind of drag down where the middle point is, even if they're only working 1 hour a week. But look at how Ireland's daily median is actually basically the same as the UK median now using these calculations, versus it being significantly higher using the mean average before. But if there's one thing that this data's shown me is, you could move to America or Luxembourg and you could still end up poor. Averages are no guarantee of wealth. But if there's one thing that is guaranteed in this world of ours, it's highlighted by this map produced by Language Nerds from data compiled by Remitly, where they looked at search traffic by adults in countries in terms of job searches. So basically, what jobs do people want to do? In China, a rapid change in one generation from food scarcity to food abundance has led to a whole generation questioning what they should eat, meaning a dietitian is the most popular search for career. Globally, the two most commonly desired jobs are a pilot in countries like the UK and the USA, and then all over the world, from India, New Zealand, Africa, Scandinavia and the Middle East, people want to be a writer. I think in a way both of those jobs represent freedom. The freedom to travel anywhere, and then the freedom to work from anywhere as a writer and earn money with your own imagination. It's probably why the idea of being your own boss is so effective at shifting overpriced garments and crappy courses, because we all crave freedom of some form. I could end this now by saying it doesn't matter where you're from or what you earn. In the words of one of the greatest poets of a generation, we dream the same dreams, we want the same things. But I won't, because I paid 10 quid for another song and it wasn't that one. So I'm going to find a way to shoehorn it in one last time. What this research has confirmed to me is that average incomes across the world vary massively. And comparing them is actually pretty hard and almost pretty pointless for a number of reasons. It's probably better just to focus on domestic comparisons, and in a second I'll put up a video that looks at UK earnings that I think is a far better measuring stick for most of the people watching this. But it is true that global incomes sit on a massive scale where the difference between the top and the bottom is vast. But the people who earn them at their core, they're the same and they desire similar things. There's just a vast majority of the global population who are unfortunate enough to be born in a place that restricts their ability to thrive. I am not one of those people. I might be unhappy a lot of the time with the way the UK's run, but actually, globally speaking, I have more options, more freedom than most. And I think it's really important that I recognise that, so that I